And amount of lead and acid in a battery determines the amount of energy the battery can store. Lead and acid. Yeah, lead and acid is a big deal. Big batteries, heavy batteries with more lead in them and more acid are going to actually have more current, more cold cranking amps. Automotive batteries have 8 cells connected in series. It's like 2 volts per cell. So if it's a 12-volt battery, how many cells are there? 2 volts per cell, 12-volt battery. 12 divided by 2 is what? 6. 6. 6. All right. A discharged battery will not freeze. That's false. As the battery gets colder, less current output's available. If one's got, if you ever noticed on your batteries, if it'll say it's got 700 cold cranking amps. And what does cold cranking amps mean?
Isn't that have something to do with when the temperature is below freezing?
0, yeah. At 0 degrees, it's got that many cold cranking amps. Okay, on your the actual cranking amps at 32 degrees is liable to be 800 and something or 850 or something like that. So it goes down a pretty good bit.
How come people put batteries in a freezer?
I'm not exactly sure about that. I've never done that. I've heard of people putting them in the oven.
See, if you heat the battery up, it'll have a little power left.
Yeah, you get a little more power out of it if you heat it up. You ever had a something that used batteries that didn't work, and you heat the batteries up, set them in front of the fireplace, let them get good and hot, and you can pick a rag and stick them back in and play as long as the battery was hot? You know, interesting how that works. But I don't know about them putting it in a freezer or nothing. Let me ask you this: for years, for just about all your life, if you're like me, you've heard that if you set batteries on concrete, they'll go dead. You ever heard that? And have you ever seen that happen? Yeah. And what do you think the reason is for it?
A lot of chemicals in it draws it out.
Well, the concrete doesn't even conduct electricity, you know, unless it's got a lot of rebar in it, I guess, or whatever. And, I'm not saying yay or nay on that, but maybe the temperature might have something to do with it. I don't know. Going up and down, who knows? Specific gravity compares the density of any liquid to the density of an equal amount of water.
Yes.
That's true, as is 4. Because the cells in a battery are separated from each other, it's necessary to perform the hydrometer test on each cell. If you're going to do specific gravity tests, the hydrometer test has to be done on each cell. Now, I also have got, and you'll get it a little farther down, a battery test that we do where we're actually measuring the voltage of each cell. How could you measure the voltage of a single cell of a battery? I'm going to take a piece of wire and I'm going to wrap it around the probe on my meter. Wrap one around each probe. And if you dip it into the water in 2 adjacent cells, you'll read the voltage in that cell. And it's not supposed to vary. You're supposed to check it loaded and charging, which you'd put your load on it while you're checking it, turn off the load, move to the next cell, and you're basically going to start with the negative battery post and the cell next to it, and then you're going to move cell. You're going to actually have 7 readings, and you're going to add the 2 together for the battery posts. And then if any of those varies from one another more than 1/10 of a volt, the battery's no good. Almost nobody does that, but Sun Automotive Equipment came up with a battery test years ago where you were supposed to charge the battery for a certain amount of time, and then you were supposed to do this test on it. And if any of them, I've actually condemned batteries in the field, and I'll say this cell here's got 1.75 volts and the rest of them have got 2.1. You know, you can actually find a bad cell that way that's just borderline. Some vehicles have convenient connection points under the hood and away from the battery for jump starting. Have you seen one of our vehicles out here like that? One of our trainer vehicles has convenient. What's the most aggravating car to jump off as a rule? The General Motors. Yeah, the green truck has got a ground connection place over here on the motor, and it's got that post down there where where you're hooking to where the battery feeds it. So you can actually open this little red cover down there, hook to that and this ground point, and you don't have to fool with these silly side post battery terminals, which are a pain to deal with. On some vehicles, you can't even get to the battery. You won't even see the battery when you open the hood. How many of you have ever seen a car that had the battery in the trunk? What kind of car was it?
My uncle had this little Honda car, right? Battery in the trunk.
Is that a Prius or what?
I don't know what that was.
Yeah, a lot of them. Well, I mean, a fair number of cars, more than you would think, have the battery in the back. And then you open the hood, you don't even see a battery anywhere. And also some of the cars like Nermes Chrysler has got it in the front of the left wheel. You got to take.
I've seen those.
Yeah, and that's basically, but that's not in the trunk. It's back.
And
It's,
there's a Challenger, like a newer Challenger we have here. That
yeah,
has
that's right. It had a battery down there. Automotive batteries are called, and I don't know why you need to know that, but it's basically secondary cells. Slow charging of a battery uses a current of what?
30 to 50 amps.
3 to 10 amps, actually. That's slow charge. And routine battery maintenance does not include which of these? A, inspecting for damage and corrosion. B, testing. C, charging when needed. Or D, reversing terminal connections. You're not going to reverse the terminal connections, okay? I will tell you what we used to run into at the filling station where I worked back in the 70s is people would run their battery all the way down somehow, you know, leave the lights on or whatever, and they'd take the battery out and they'd set it in there in their garage and they'd hook the battery charger up to it backwards and they'd charge it up backwards. And when they got through charging it, the positive post was negative and the negative post was positive. And nowadays, if you put one in like that, it burns things up. In those days, all it would do is make a big spark because the alternator, the diodes, you know, and everything. And so then they'd realize what they'd done and they'd bring it over there to the filling station and we would wire it up to a light bulb and run it down all the way and then we'd charge it up the right way. You even know you can charge your battery up backwards? If it's all the way dead, you can charge it up to where it's totally backwards. That'd be nasty if you got one off the shelf that was brand new that was charged up backwards, wouldn't it? That would be bad news. I mean, because you'd fry a bunch of stuff on a car nowadays. Let's see. Battery load test or high rate discharge test measures terminal voltage while the battery is supplying current for what? Our machine has got a timer on it. You put a load on there. You know what the cold cranking amps are? Let's say the cold cranking amps are 500. You're going to load it to half of that for 15 seconds, and it's not supposed to go below 9.6 volts in that 15-second time period. Got it? Half the cold cranking amps for 15 seconds shouldn't go below 9.6 volts. Now that's a load test. That's why that machine out there has got a carbon pile in it. When you turn that knob, it rams a bunch of carbon discs together and creates a direct short between the positive and negative sides of the battery, and it pulls it down. Which of the following is not a color used in a built-in hydrometer? And on the GM Delco batteries used to have a little round thing where you look down in there, and if what was in the bottom was green, then it was a battery. It was, you know, that particular cell was okay. It would basically, if you look down in there and you saw that green thing, so it was a green one, then you know that that particular cell was charged. It wouldn't tell you about the whole battery. It'd just tell you about that one cell. And they stopped doing that after a few years. I hadn't seen one of those in a long time. Number 13, the open circuit or at rest voltage of a fully charged battery is what? How much you going to have? I'm going to have 12.6. That's open circuit. That means it's not connected to anything. Number 12 was basically C. And then number 12 being it's green. All right. That's as far as that test goes. Didn't take long to do that one. And
What was on?